On Tuesday, the 31st of January, I was a guest on CDFM's Tech Space with Rex, Chiwete, and Bybisasa. Here's what went down.
Okay, all right. It's time for us to talk to somebody very, very important. He's here in the building already, and we're going to talk about something pretty interesting. Podcasting.
You've heard the word. It's a buzzword right now.
Yeah, it is a buzzword.
And in 2023, it seems like all the buzzwords we are hearing is coming out of a podcast.
I'm telling you, honestly, it is. So he is a radio and a podcast consultant. His name is Tony Doe, and he joins us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So good to have you join us.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. This feels like a homecoming of sorts.
Okay.
Nostalgic?
Yeah.
Yeah, very. Very.
All right, so good to have you join us. So, I mean, there are 464.7 million podcast listeners globally
So they say.
as of January 2023.
So they say.
And
You don't believe it?
They say numbers don't lie. Well, let's go with that.
But then again, with these numbers, obviously it means the rise of podcasters are just out there. Why do you think this is a thing right now?
Why it's a thing right now is simply because people have stories to tell. And people love listening to stories, whether it's in news form, it's in conversations, it's in statements. People love to hear stories. And sometimes they can't get all the stories they want from radio or TV because of limitations and, restrictions. But with podcasting, you have a free reign. And then, you can tell these stories, tell as much as you want, tell whatever kind of stories you want, and you will find listeners.
Okay, let's backtrack a little bit, because we might assume a lot of people understand what a podcast is, but I'm sure there's somebody who's wondering, what's all these things that they're talking about podcasts?
I get asked that.
Yeah, so what is it really? What is a podcast? Is it a piece of recorded audio or is it a video? Because we watch podcasts now, so...
Yeah. For those who watch podcasts, calm down. There are certain. Well, there are arguments, for that. But I'm one of the, traditional people when it comes to what a podcast is. It's a digital audio file.
Okay.
That's the first thing. It's a digital audio file, and then it's available for downloading. And you can listen to it on any of your digital devices. But there's a key thing in a podcast that separates it from every other form of audio content, and that's the RSS feed.
Okay.
The RSS feed is a piece of technology that allows you to distribute your digital audio to podcast players like Apple, Spotify, Google. So for instance, now you've developed your digital audio, you've recorded your MP3 on your phone. Now you want to turn it into a podcast. Now let me assume you've edited it as well, as best as you can with the phone. You need a hosting platform, your podcast hosting platform. And that's the place where your podcast lives. Now you have versions like Anchor, Buzzsprout, Libsyn, AfriPods, and that particular hosting platform develops the RSS feed for you. Now that RSS feed, in the past, podcast platforms automatically submitted the feed to Apple and Spotify and Co.
Okay.
But over time, because of control issues, they can give you the instructions on what to do, and then you submit these RSS feeds yourself. Now, whatever you do to your audio within that platform, it gets altered on the RSS feed. The beauty of the RSS feed is you don't have to keep submitting episodes of your content to each and every podcast player. If you've submitted your RSS feed once, whenever you update your content on your podcast hosting platform, it's updated across board.
Interesting.
That's why YouTube isn't a podcast.
Oh, wow, shots fired. Yeah, okay.
They know. That's why they're coming into it. They've just released, how many pages of podcast or whatever. They're coming into the business themselves. Audio is still powerful. It is. You can have a podcast and still have a video version of it, but you can't tell me that I am watching your podcast if I can't access it on actual podcast listening apps.
Okay, so it's a case of you first create the audio before.
Yes, you do.
You get the video. How
it
can
depends.
people...
Some actually just record everything together. You do your video, then you repurpose your video as audio.
Okay. All right. So if you're interested in learning about podcasts, and we're having that conversation, so many things happening with the world of podcasts, we'll bring you more right after this.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Yes, we're having a very sweet conversation right here.
Indeed.
On Tech Space. Still got Tony Doe here. We're talking about, podcasting and what you need to know about it. I'm going to just go directly right now, Tony. How can one make money from podcasting?
Why is that always the first question?
Because even radio stations are open to make money. Let's not lie.
I'm not against that, but I'll tell you this. As somebody who's been doing this for almost a decade now, if that is your first impression coming into the space, you will fail terribly.
How about your second impression?
Your second and third impression, you will still fail, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Now let me use the analogy of what we're doing right now. People are playing different roles in this particular building. We're up here now presenting the show.
Yeah.
Producing the show. That's 2 skills so far. You're interviewing a guest. That's the 3rd skill. Now there's somebody holding a camera here recording. That's a separate skill. There's somebody downstairs, or there are people downstairs working on the papers for marketing. That's another skill. There's somebody in accounts. That's another skill. There's somebody in production. That's another skill. We're counting different skills, Abi.
Yeah.
But we're comfortable doing what we're doing. Why? Because all these other functions are working well together. As a podcaster, when you start, you're everything. And your knowledge is going to be terribly limited. And then you're going to be swarmed with experts and gurus bombarding you with what you should do. You just asked me how to make money. This is how people who don't even produce content anymore now make money. Off people asking how to make money. And I've been asked that too. Why aren't you making money doing that? I said, because I'm pretty straightforward about things like this. So when people ask me, how do you make money? I'll say, please don't come into podcasting if the key thing is to make money. I'm not saying you won't, but you might not have the tools or the time or the resources to make the money you think you want to make. Now, here's what happens. How do you make money with podcasting? Okay, fine. You look for a platform that gives you that sort of option.
Okay.
So these days you have platforms that handle your hosting. So you want a platform that can handle a large amount of your audio, maybe unlimited, or maybe for a certain size you're willing to pay a certain amount. Okay, so you have your audio. You want to know whether or not that platform can distribute your content. Fine. Then you want to know whether the platform has analytics, statistics. You can get numbers of listeners. You can find out regions and where they belong. Then you also want to know whether they have a monetization plan. Many of them do.
Okay.
Now, podcasters, the bigger platforms, you pay a lot of money for these things. So there's, usually we have podcast advertising agencies, and some of them work very closely with podcast companies, and they have this technology that allows dynamic advert insertions into your podcast. So you can make money from adverts, just like you do with radio.
Okay.
Can be dynamically inserted into your podcast, and based on the platform you're using, you get a certain amount at the end of whatever time the advert runs, and then of course the platform takes something as well. You can also enjoy sponsorship. Now, if you're the sort of person who is a strong community builder, and this is the one I encourage, when you're creating your content, build a community around it.
Okay.
Because your community is stronger than the numbers of followers or invincible listeners you think you have. When things are rough, it is your community that will take care of you. I knew of podcasts that almost went obsolete last year because advertisers had stopped bringing money to the platform and things were going bleak. And then they talked about it on an episode, and it was the community of listeners, the core fans, who kept the podcast going, and the podcast is still going on now. So build a community, have like a paying platform you can always share and talk about, and then tell them to support you there. In Nigeria now, I'm encouraging podcasters to be bold and send pitches to brands or companies they think share value. You have value because you have listeners. So if your listeners are also within the same space as the target customers of these brands, you could ask them to come on board, support your show, not interrupt your show, but support your show in such a way that your community benefits from the brand, and the brand, sustains you. So yes, that's how to make money. Sponsorships and ads.
Can anybody start a podcast?
Anybody can start a podcast. Anybody shouldn't start a podcast.
Okay, explain.
Yeah. Anybody can start a podcast. If you're tech savvy,
okay,
you have a phone, you have a recorder on your phone, you have an idea of what story you want to share, you can hit the record button on your phone, store it and save it. And then there are some platforms like Anchor or Spreaker, for instance, that even allow you record from your phone directly into the platform. Anchor allows you record, gives you music, allows you place your intros and outros all from your mobile device. The quality output may not be perfect because, of course, you have limitations with your phone, but it's adequate enough. Now, if you're the sort of person who has listeners who really don't mind what your technical abilities are, you could just, carry on with your story and you share. Now, those are two platforms that allow that happen for you. People can get creative with the way they do stuff. I know there are times when I couldn't get into the studio quickly enough, and I used my phone to record, and then went back, did the editing, and put out the show. But yes, anybody can record, but not anybody should record, or anybody should have a podcast, because one thing that would help you as a podcaster is to actually be aware that you have listeners, and then you have to make out time to create content. Creative people that I know, many of them are lazy. So there will come a time where you get tired. If you're churning out content every week, one day you will wake up and look at yourself and say, why? Especially if you look at your numbers and you're like, 3 listeners this week. Why?
It can get quite discouraging.
Yes.
So you really have to, if you're coming into this, you're coming in with a consciousness that you're going to have to put in time, you're going to have to put in work. But most importantly, it has to be something you want to enjoy.
Okay. Let me just take off from that, because I know some people have heard this last part, and especially with the 3 listeners part, and they're like, okay, I thought this was something I should jump into, but maybe let me know about something else. But what is the break-even point? Like, if you're able to stay committed, put out 1 episode per week, or should you even do more than 1 episode a week? What is that? What should you do to ensure that at least you are able to build and break even?
Have a plan. You could borrow from radio. You could borrow from TV. You could break your content into seasons and then tell yourself, you know what, for season 1, I'm doing 13 episodes. That's about 3 years, 13 weeks. That's a quarter. That works, and then maybe you throw in a bonus episode in between, you throw in a trailer in between. Have a plan. And then work with that plan, because you will find out when you begin, the work doesn't end with you just publishing your content. You're going to have to dedicate time and resources to promoting that content so that people can actually get to listen to it. The space is saturated now because almost everybody has content. And if you're not able to rise above the noise, your great content might not be heard. So the real work is even in promotion, not so much in publishing.
Okay.
So promotion, marketing, you would even see budget money to run your podcast as an advert. I even tell people, come to radio stations, ask them what the cheapest fare is or the cheapest rate is. Create a 30-second, use your trailer for your podcast. If it's 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, buy airtime.
All right, it's your number one lifestyle station, City 1051. We're having quite an enlightening conversation on podcast with the one, the only Tony Doe. We'll be wrapping things up in a moment.
The lifestyle of Lagos, City 1051 FM.
Radio with an exception on City 1051 FM. Your number one lifestyle station.
Keep your eyes peeled. Keep your ears to the ground. Follow us at City 1051.
Okay, still breakfast in the City Tech Space right here, and we're about to wrap things up with a conversation about podcasting with Tony Doe. Now, Tony, you mentioned something about marketing earlier. Can one actually, can a podcaster stick to just audio production and promotion alone?
You can, but you'll be limited. But again, these tools exist. Platforms exist. That's why, again, let me see. One of the things you should look out for when choosing your podcast platform is an option for that as well. You don't have to do everything yourself.
Okay.
But it is important that you equip yourself with the knowledge of how the entire ecosystem works. There are platforms that can help you run your own adverts if you do not want to use what your hosting platform provides. Podcast advertising options that exist. Spotify has a very beautiful one that is that allows you even do your promos by yourself. But there's a budget, there's a threshold, but you go there, you've created your audio content, and then, you set up your account, you create the time frame or the time period you want to run the advert for, put in all the numbers regarding your target audience and your demographics, and then Spotify runs that for you. Now, the advantage of running that kind of advert on Spotify is a podcast and music platform. So somebody is going to hear your stuff one way or the other when, wherever or however it's being played. So you can use that option too. There are many podcast platforms that actually provide that service exclusively for podcast promotions. Now, if you're coming into podcasting, I'll advise that, go where the audience already exists. Okay, but if your budget is limited, come to radio too.
Okay.
Radio is your cousin.
Your cousin.
Truly. Okay.
But, those platforms exist, and you don't have to do everything yourself. You can ask these questions. There are newsletters. Please, if you're coming into podcasting, subscribe to podcast newsletters. I have one.
And join a community of podcasters.
Yes, you have to. You have to, because where there are numbers and where there are people going through what you're going through as well, you have other people who can also prefer quicker solutions than anywhere else. All
right, thank you very, very much for joining us on the show this morning to talk podcasting. We've been speaking with Tony Doe. He's a broadcaster, podcaster, and he's been able to shed light on this topic of podcasting. Thank you so much for coming.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
We should have you again.
Yeah, we should have you.
It was an enlightening conversation. It's your number one lifestyle station, City 1051. More to come. My name is Bybisasa.
My name is Chiwete Onyema.
And my name is Rex Okiche.